The conversation seems fine. You're being friendly, engaged, contributing, but something's off. People's eyes glaze over. They check their phones. They find reasons to leave. You walk away thinking it went well. They walk away relieved it's over. This is the cruelest kind of social rejection, the quiet kind. No one tells you what you're doing wrong. They just stop calling, stop inviting you, stop sharing anything real. You're left replaying conversations, searching for the moment you lost them, wondering why connections that seemed promising just fade away. Here's the truth most people never hear. You're probably not doing anything obviously wrong. You're not rude or mean. You're making subtle errors in conversation, habits so small they're invisible to you but exhausting to everyone else. And because no one tells you, you keep doing them, wondering why relationships stay surface level, why people seem friendly but distant, why you're always on the outside of deeper connections. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But there are 7 other conversation habits, just as destructive, that quietly push people away without you realizing it. Today, I'll show you 8 conversation habits that make people dislike you, not loudly, but quietly, which makes them nearly impossible to recognize without help. These aren't about being fake or manipulative. They're about removing the invisible barriers between you and genuine connection. If you're ready to understand why conversations haven't been connecting the way you hoped, subscribe. Let's fix this together. Let's begin. Habit number 1. You wait for your turn to talk instead of actually listening. Someone's telling you about their difficult week. You nod, maintain eye contact, make the right sounds. But inside your head, you're not processing what they're saying. You're formulating your response, thinking about your similar experience, planning what you'll say the moment they pause for breath. The words are entering your ears, but you're not truly receiving them. You're just waiting for the opening to speak. This habit quietly damages connection because people feel it. They can't articulate how, but they sense you're not fully present. The conversation feels transactional, not connective. They're sharing something real, and you're treating it like a cue, waiting for your turn. Eventually, they stop sharing anything meaningful with you, because what's the point of talking to someone who's just rehearsing their own monologue while you speak? I watched this destroy a friendship. My colleague would share updates about her aging mother's declining health, something weighing heavily on her. Her friend would nod along, seem sympathetic. But the moment my colleague paused, her friend would immediately launch into her own parent stories. Not to connect, but to top it. My colleague started noticing a pattern. Every conversation followed the same rhythm. She'd share something vulnerable. Her friend would wait exactly long enough for a breath, then redirect everything back to her own experiences. Within 6 months, my colleague stopped confiding in her entirely. The friendship became surface-level small talk because she'd learned that her friend wasn't actually listening, just waiting. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." What he understood was that genuine listening is rare. Most people perform listening while mentally rehearsing their response. This isn't connection. It's parallel monologues. The Stoics valued presence, being fully where you are with whom you're with. When you're planning your response while someone speaks, you're not present. You're in your own head, making the conversation about you even while they're talking. Epictetus knew that true listening, where you're actually trying to understand rather than just waiting to be understood, is one of the highest forms of respect you can offer another person. It says, "Your experience matters more than my need to speak. Your words deserve my full attention, not divided focus between hearing you and preparing my performance." When someone's speaking, focus entirely on understanding them, not on what you'll say next. After they finish, pause for 2 seconds before responding. This ensures you actually heard them and signals you're considering their words. Ask a follow-up question about what they shared before sharing your own experience. And the next habit makes people feel even more invisible than just not being heard. Habit number 2. You one-up every story. Someone shares an experience, a difficult project at work, a frustrating travel delay, a proud moment with their child. Before they've even finished processing what they shared, you jump in with your bigger, better, more dramatic version. They mention a challenging client. You had an impossible client. They talk about a long flight delay. Your delay was twice as long. They share pride about their kid making the team. Your kid made varsity and got a scholarship. You think you're bonding over shared experiences. They feel like their moment just got erased. This habit damages connection because it turns every conversation into a competition they didn't sign up for. When someone shares something meaningful and you immediately top it, you're not validating their experience. You're invalidating it. You're sending a message. What happened to you isn't impressive enough. Let me show you what real struggle looks like, what real achievement looks like. They wanted to be heard. You made it about being outdone. My brother-in-law does this constantly. At a family dinner, my niece excitedly told everyone about getting accepted to her first-choice college, a huge milestone she'd worked years toward. Before anyone could congratulate her, her father jumped in with a detailed story about his own college acceptance, the multiple schools that wanted him, how competitive admissions were back then. My niece's face fell. She stopped talking about it. Her big moment became a launching pad for his trip down memory lane. Later, when I congratulated her privately, she said she'd learned not to share good news with her dad because he always has to make it about himself. She wasn't angry, just resigned. That resignation is worse. It's the quiet death of wanting to share anything real with someone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can a person find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in their own mind." But he also understood that ego constantly wants to prove itself superior. The impulse to one-up comes from insecurity, a need to demonstrate that your experiences are more significant. Marcus spent his life fighting this impulse, reminding himself that other people's victories don't diminish his, that their struggles don't need to be compared to his. He knew that true strength allows others to have their moment without needing to reclaim the spotlight. When you let someone else's experience stand without competition, you're demonstrating confidence. When you rush to top it, you're revealing insecurity. When someone shares an experience, resist the urge to immediately share your similar story. Instead, ask a question about their experience. Validate what they shared before relating it to yourself. Let their moment be theirs. If this lesson just made you realize you've been turning conversations into competitions, type "I'm listening now" below. Acknowledging the pattern is the first step to breaking it, and your honesty might give someone else permission to do the same. And the next habit makes conversations feel like you're draining people's energy without noticing. Habit number 3. You give unsolicited advice. Someone shares a struggle they're facing. Before they've even finished describing the situation, you're already solving it. You jump straight into what they should do, how they should handle it, the steps they need to take. You think you're being helpful. They feel like you just dismissed their feelings to get to your solution. Most people don't share problems because they need answers. They share because they need to be heard, validated, understood. When you immediately pivot to advice, you skip the part they actually needed. This habit damages connection because it sends a clear message. Your feelings aren't important. Let's get to fixing this. When someone's describing something difficult and you interrupt with solutions, you're treating their emotional experience like an inconvenient obstacle to efficiency. They wanted empathy. You gave them a to-do list. Over time, they learn you're not a safe person to be vulnerable with, not because you're unkind, but because you make vulnerability feel like a problem to solve rather than an experience to share. A friend learned this the hard way with her daughter. Throughout her teenage years, the daughter would start to share things: friend drama, school stress, relationship confusion. My friend would listen for maybe 30 seconds, then launch into advice mode. What the daughter should say, how she should handle it, what the friend was probably thinking. She thought she was being a good mother, helping her daughter navigate challenges. But her daughter stopped coming to her with anything real. She'd share surface details, but never the actual struggle. Years later, after some family counseling, the daughter finally said what she'd needed all along wasn't solutions. It was just her mother sitting with her in the difficulty, acknowledging how hard it was, making her feel less alone in it. The advice, however well-intentioned, had created distance. Epictetus taught, "Know first who you are and then adorn yourself accordingly." What he meant applied to conversation too. Know first what the moment requires before you act. Not every problem shared is a request for solutions. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer isn't advice, but presence. Epictetus understood restraint, knowing when to speak and when to simply be with someone. The impulse to immediately fix comes from discomfort with others' pain. We want to solve it quickly so we don't have to sit with the heaviness of it. But that discomfort is ours, not theirs. When you rush to advice, you're managing your own discomfort, not serving their need. Before offering advice, ask one simple question. Do you want to talk through solutions, or do you just need someone to listen? Then honor whatever they answer. Sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is nothing except be fully present. And the next habit makes people feel like they don't actually matter in the conversation. Habit number 4. You bring every topic back to yourself. Someone mentions they're thinking about changing careers. Within 2 sentences, you're talking about your career journey, your job changes, your professional philosophy. They bring up a book they're reading. Suddenly it's about books you've read, your thoughts on the author, your reading habits. Any subject, any topic somehow becomes about your experience, your opinion, your story. You think you're relating and connecting. They feel like they're just providing prompts for your performance. This habit damages connection because it turns the other person into an audience for your life rather than a participant in a mutual conversation. When every thread they introduce gets redirected to you, they stop introducing threads. Why bother sharing when it's just going to become another launching pad for your stories? The conversation feels hijacked. They came to talk with you, they're leaving having talked at you, or, more accurately, having been talked at by you. My neighbor experienced this with her book club. One member would do this every single meeting. Someone would share their thoughts about the book, what moved them, what they disagreed with, questions it raised. This member would listen for maybe 10 seconds, then spend the next 5 minutes describing her interpretation, her similar experiences, her opinions on the author's other works, tangentially related books she'd read. Every discussion point became about her perspective. After 6 months, people stopped sharing nuanced thoughts at meetings. They'd give surface-level comments because they knew any depth would just be an invitation for her extended monologue. The discussions that had once been rich and varied became shallow. Not because people didn't have thoughts, but because they'd learned sharing them meant losing control of the conversation entirely. She genuinely didn't understand why people seemed less engaged. She thought she was contributing enthusiastically. She was actually suffocating everyone else's contribution. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of genuine interest in others' thoughts and experiences. He reminded himself daily to listen, not to respond, but to understand. He knew that ego constantly wants to center itself, to make everything about its own perspective and experience. True wisdom, he taught, requires restraining that impulse. When you allow the conversation to remain focused on what someone else introduced, you're demonstrating respect for their inner world. When you constantly redirect everything to yourself, you're revealing that their inner world isn't as interesting to you as your own. People feel that, and they respond by sharing less, engaging less, eventually avoiding conversation with you entirely because it's not really a conversation. It's a performance they're required to witness. When someone introduces a topic, stay with their thread. Ask follow-up questions about their experience before sharing yours. If you share a related story, make it brief and then return focus to them. Keep the spotlight where they placed it. If these conversation habits are helping you see patterns you didn't realize were pushing people away, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom on authentic connection. And if this clarity is worth sharing, like it so others can recognize these barriers in their own conversations. And the next habit makes people want to stop talking mid-sentence. Habit number 5, you interrupt and finish people's sentences. Someone's mid-thought, searching for the right word or building toward their point. You jump in, you complete their sentence for them or cut them off to add your perspective before they've finished theirs. You think you're being helpful, showing you understand, keeping the conversation moving. They feel disrespected, unheard, and like their thoughts aren't worth waiting for. Every interruption sends a message. What you're saying isn't important enough for me to let you finish. I already know where you're going. My addition is more valuable than your completion. This habit damages connection because it robs people of their agency in conversation. When you consistently interrupt, you're communicating that your thoughts have priority over theirs, that your pace matters more than their process. Some people need time to articulate complex thoughts. Some pause to consider their words carefully. Your interruptions don't help, they derail. And people who get interrupted repeatedly learn to stop trying. They keep contributions short and simple because going deeper just means getting cut off mid-sentence. I saw this pattern destroy a marriage. The husband would interrupt constantly, not maliciously but habitually. His wife would start sharing something about her day, and he'd cut in with a related thought, a solution, a question that redirected before she'd made her point. In therapy, she described feeling invisible in her own home. Not because he didn't care about her, he clearly did, but because he never let her finish a complete thought. She'd stopped telling him anything that required more than one sentence because she knew she wouldn't get to the end of it. He was shocked. He genuinely hadn't realized. He thought he was being engaged, responsive, keeping conversation dynamic. She experienced it as being constantly dismissed, as if her words weren't worth the patience required to hear them fully. The habit had been slowly suffocating her voice for years. Seneca wrote about the importance of patience as a cornerstone of wisdom. He taught that impatience reveals a lack of respect for others' dignity. When you can't wait for someone to finish their thought, you're prioritizing your discomfort with silence over their right to complete expression. Seneca practiced deliberate pauses in conversation, training himself to let others' words land completely before responding. He understood that interruption isn't just rude, it's violence against someone's attempt to be understood. When you interrupt, you're saying your need to speak is more urgent than their need to be heard. That message accumulates. Eventually, people stop speaking around you at all. After someone speaks, pause for 2 full seconds before responding. Let silence exist. It ensures they're truly finished and signals their words deserve consideration. If you catch yourself about to interrupt, physically stop, close your mouth, wait. And the next habit makes every conversation feel hollow and superficial. Habit number 6, you only ask surface-level questions. You ask how someone's weekend was, they say fine. You ask how work is going, they say busy. You ask if they enjoyed their vacation, they say yes. Every question can be answered in one word, and usually is. You think you're showing interest. They experience it as checking boxes, going through social motions without any genuine curiosity about who they actually are. Surface questions get surface answers, and surface answers don't build connection. This habit damages relationships because it keeps everything at arm's length. When you never go deeper than basic status updates, you're signaling that you don't really want to know them. You just want to perform the ritual of asking. People sense this. They learn that conversations with you will stay shallow, so they don't bother offering depth. Not because they don't have it, but because you've never created space for it. Eventually, the relationship plateaus at pleasantries. You know facts about their life, but nothing about their inner world. A man I knew complained constantly that he couldn't form close friendships. He'd meet people, have cordial relationships, but nothing ever deepened. I observed him at a gathering. He'd approach people, ask about their job, their commute, their weekend plans. When they answered, he'd nod, then move to the next surface question. Someone mentioned feeling overwhelmed at work. Instead of asking what was overwhelming about it or how that was affecting them, he asked what time they usually get home. Someone mentioned their daughter just started college. Instead of asking how that transition felt or what they were most excited or worried about, he asked what she was studying. Every potential doorway into something real, he stayed on the porch. He wasn't being cold, he genuinely didn't know how to go deeper. He'd learned conversation as an exchange of facts, not an exploration of experience. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of genuine curiosity about others' inner lives. He reminded himself to ask not just what people do, but what moves them, what troubles them, what matters to them. He understood that surface questions are safe but sterile. Real connection requires risk. The risk of asking something that goes beneath pleasant facts into actual human experience. When you ask how something made someone feel, what that experience was like for them, what they're learning or struggling with, you're inviting them to be seen. Most people are desperate to be seen, but they won't offer it unless you ask for it. Replace status questions with experience questions. Instead of asking what someone did, ask what that was like. Instead of asking how things are, ask what's been on their mind lately. Create space for depth by asking for it. If you're learning to ask questions that go beneath the surface and create real connection, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom on meaningful relationships. And if this is helping you understand why your conversations have stayed shallow, like it so others can discover how to go deeper too. And the next habit makes people exhausted just from talking to you. Habit number 7. You make everything a debate. Someone mentions they're trying a new approach to something. You immediately point out the flaws. They share a perspective on a current event. You counter with why they're wrong. They mention enjoying a book or movie. You explain why it wasn't actually that good. You think you're engaging critically, having intelligent discourse. They experience it as being attacked for every thought they express. Conversations with you feel like defending positions instead of sharing ideas. This habit damages relationships because it makes every interaction exhausting. When people know that anything they say will be challenged, contradicted, or corrected, they stop saying anything meaningful. Not because they can't defend their views, but because they're tired of having to. They wanted conversation. You turned it into combat. Eventually, people around you learn to keep things bland and safe, because depth just means more arguments they didn't sign up for. My uncle destroyed most of his friendships this way. Every gathering, every casual conversation became an opportunity for him to prove someone wrong. Someone would mention they were thinking about switching to an electric car. He'd spend 10 minutes explaining why that was impractical. Someone would share excitement about a new restaurant. He'd list the ways it was overpriced or overrated. A cousin mentioned trying meditation. He launched into why meditation was pseudoscience. He genuinely thought he was helping people think more critically, saving them from bad decisions or uninformed views. What he was actually doing was making people dread talking to him. Family events became smaller. People stopped inviting him. When they did include him, conversations stayed relentlessly surface level because nobody wanted to offer up any real thought just to watch him tear it apart. He couldn't understand why people seemed distant. He thought he was intellectually engaged. They experienced him as exhausting and hostile. Epictetus taught, "If someone speaks badly of you, consider whether what they say is true. If it is, correct yourself. If it isn't, ignore it." But he also understood the importance of choosing your battles. Not every incorrect statement needs correction. Not every different opinion requires debate. Connection, he knew, often matters more than being right. When you challenge everything someone says, you're prioritizing your need to be correct over their need to feel safe sharing with you. Epictetus practiced restraint in conversation, asking himself whether his correction would serve the relationship or just serve his ego. Most of the time, he stayed quiet, not because he agreed, but because he valued the person more than winning the point. Before challenging something someone said, ask yourself, will this strengthen our connection or just prove I'm right? If it's the latter, let it go. Save your intellectual energy for conversations explicitly about debate, not casual sharing. And the final habit destroys trust faster than any other. Habit number 8. You share their private information with others. Someone confides something personal to you, a struggle at work, a relationship issue, a private family matter. It was shared in confidence between you and them. Then you mention it to someone else. Maybe you frame it as concern, seeking advice on their behalf. Maybe it comes up naturally in conversation and you share it without thinking. Maybe you don't use their name, but the details make it obvious. Regardless of your intention, you've broken something sacred. They trusted you with something private. You treated it as public information. That trust doesn't come back. This habit doesn't just damage connection, it destroys it. When people discover you've shared what they told you in confidence, they don't just feel betrayed. They feel exposed, vulnerable, unsafe. Every private thing they've ever shared with you is now suspect. Did you share that too? Who else knows? The relationship doesn't recover because the foundation of it, trust, is gone. And once you've established yourself as someone who can't keep confidence, people stop confiding in you entirely. Not just about big things, about anything real. A woman at my workplace learned this devastatingly. A co-worker had confided about struggling with anxiety, how it was affecting her performance, how she was afraid of being judged. The woman mentioned it to another colleague, framed as concern for their struggling co-worker. Within a week, half the office knew. The co-worker found out through someone else asking if she was okay. She was humiliated. She'd shared something deeply personal with one person she thought she could trust. That person had distributed her private struggle like office gossip. She never spoke to the woman again beyond basic professional necessities. The woman apologized repeatedly, insisted she'd only been trying to help, hadn't meant any harm. None of it mattered. The co-worker had learned she couldn't be trusted with anything that mattered. The friendship was over. Not angry, just over. Cold, permanent distance. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about integrity and the sacredness of trust. He understood that when someone gives you their confidence, they're giving you something they can't take back. Protecting that confidence isn't just about being a good person. It's about honoring the vulnerability required for someone to trust you with their inner world. When you betray that trust, Marcus taught, you're not just hurting them, you're revealing your own character. You're showing that you value the social currency of having information to share more than you value the person who trusted you enough to share it. If someone shares something personal, treat it as sacred. If you're unsure whether something is private, ask before mentioning it to anyone. Default to silence. Protecting someone's trust is more important than having something interesting to say. These 8 habits aren't proof you're a bad person. They're signs you're human and unaware. Most people do at least 3 of these without realizing the damage. The difference between people who build deep connections and people who quietly push others away isn't intention. It's awareness. The Stoics understood that relationships require constant self-examination, not to become perfect, but to remove the barriers we unconsciously create. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, noticing his own patterns, adjusting his behavior, striving for genuine connection without letting ego sabotage it. You don't need to fix all 8 overnight. Pick one habit you recognized in yourself. Focus on it for 2 weeks. Notice when you do it. Catch yourself. Choose the alternative behavior. Watch what happens in your conversations when you remove just one barrier. If these 8 habits gave you clarity on why some connections haven't deepened, subscribe for more Stoic wisdom on authentic communication and meaningful relationships. And if this helped you see your own patterns without shame, like it, so others can develop this same awareness. Connection isn't complicated, but it requires removing the small habits that quietly push people away. Now you know what they are. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, stay stoic, stay aware, stay connected.